Here we go.
You found the only Geek Culture Showcast. This is the Geek Speak Show. The Geek Speak Show talks about and to the movers and shakers in geek culture.
God bless the geek.
The Geek Speak Show is powered by GeekTyrant.com, Collider.com, RamaScreen.com, and MightyVale.com. Get ready to speak geek on the Geek Speak Show with your host, Henry. Hola, we're here. Welcome to the Geek Speak Show. Yes, we are all here, all of us. We had our, what do they call it, the rewind. A rewind, easy for me to say, last week because it was like a war zone here. There was construction, all kind of stuff going on. So I decided we'll take a little break. Plus it was like scorching hot too. So the girls are here. Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm amazing.
I'm so freaking good. I can't even tell you.
Like Spider-Man. Should we sing Happy Birthday? It was you're finally legal, 19. Yeah. Well, almost legal.
I have made it into another decade. Let's not mention which one.
There you go.
Yeah, so the other thing we got to mention is youtube.com/GeekSpeak Videos. Go on there. There's a little thing that says the Geek Speak Video Show. Guess what you're going to find there?
Videos. Oh my God, you're going to find the best videos ever.
See, she can be taught. Yeah, it's going to be there. The pilot episode is up there. We have what I call the one-shots, which is apologies to Marvel Comics and every other comic. It's a limited edition, if you will, thing where, like the one we did with Joe Field. Thanks a lot again for Flying Colors, allowing us to be there, invade them a couple weeks ago. Those big, huge stores, they're going to be events, whether it's a book signing, an artist signing, title launch, or just a big sale. There's other stores in the Bay Area that are kind of small, and because of the space, they don't allow a live audience to be in there. I mean, they can be in there, but then our cameras won't fit in there. So we're going to do a one-shot, meaning they're going to have one shot to say hi to you guys and entice you to go to their stores. So the first one is coming up pretty soon. It's somebody who's been on the show a few times before. You ladies remember him from Free Comic Book Day earlier this year. Romy from Coastside Comics. I'm also going to show you why it's called Coastside Comics. Very beautiful coast scenery there. You'll see what I mean.
And I like
Pacifica.
The fact that,
I love the fact
gorgeous.
you'll actually get to see it this time. So that'll be coming up pretty soon. And also let me announce episode 2.
Dun, dun, dun.
No, not Star Wars. The special edition of the Geek Speak Video Show, where Arielle shot first. No, the episode 2 for the video show is going to take place July 7th. Mark it on your calendars. July 7th, Saturday, starting at 10 a.m. at Lee's Comics in Mountain View. They will be celebrating 30 years of existence in Mountain View. They have 2 locations, one in San Mateo, one in Mountain View. All the fun will be taking place at the Mountain View location on Saturday. It's a big, huge sale that they're going to have. Books, even the classic ones, for, I think he said 30 cents.
Ooh.
30 cents.
That's sweet.
Except, of course, if you find Amazing Fantasy number 15 or Batman number 1, they're not going to be 30 cents.
Of course.
Let's not get crazy. But
You're not going to find them in there, I think.
Yeah, and it's going to happen Saturday, July 7th. More information will be coming. It'll be on our Facebook, on our Twitter. You guys are...
I'll be tweeting about it. I'll have it up. You can follow me at AKA Geek Girl, in fact, and I'll give you all the updates.
Yeah, you guys know how much I love doing all the tweetering and...
We got it. Don't worry.
We got it. Don't you worry about it, old man.
What? My hearing aid's not on.
Turn your hearing aid back on. There you go.
Yeah.
Turn just the headphones up a little
Something
bit.
I have been hearing, actually, is a lot of Prometheus talk.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Lord,
That's
yeah.
because it's good.
We all finally got to see it, and it's right down the middle. Some are with Rachel, really, really good. Some are with me. It's like, I don't know. I mean, it's a beautiful movie to see, to watch.
Well, okay, so I have to explain myself. I'm not saying that it's Avengers good. What I'm saying was it was a good movie, and it was beautiful, to your point. I did want more at the end as far as story went and stuff like that. I felt that was kind of left off at a, strange place, but it's definitely worth seeing.
Well, and I liked that it really felt like a sci-fi movie from when I was growing up. So it wasn't a sci-fi movie from like when they were campy and silly, but it was polished. It had a story, and that it felt like what I remember sci-fi feeling like. So I was scared at the right points, and I was really tense, and I was hiding behind my popcorn, and it really played up to that. Although my friend did kind of make me realize that I'm going to have to go back and see it again, because she said that she couldn't get past the fact that there were these scientists acting in no way like scientists would act. Like, just why would you touch that? Why would you even touch that if you know anything about what you're doing? So she said that like ruined the movie for her, and now I kind of want to go back and see it again with that, and then throw popcorn at the screen.
First thing, oh, you're the one. First
That's
things
me,
first.
always me.
First things first. Can we all agree? No spoiler alert here because we've all seen it by now. Can we all agree it is an Alien prequel? First of all,
No.
why?
Yeah.
No, it's set in the universe, but that doesn't make it a prequel. I'm sorry, it's not a, like, there's references to the stuff that happens later on, but it is not setting up those stories even at all.
That's where I have the problem with this. Because some of the marketing, in fact, some of the clips you guys heard on the show that week, release week, Sir Ridley Scott and Damon, they both said, no, they actually have WonderCon. They both said in the panel, it's not an Alien prequel. They hinted that, it, like you said, it is in the in its universe. But as soon as I saw it,
It felt like it.
Full of hot fudge sundae. It's an Alien prequel, the 1000%.
No! You guys are so wrong!
Because if not, why would you put a xenomorph at the end?
Well, because it was a fun little, like, hey, fan service. There you go.
I don't know. You guys will have to see for yourself, because...
But that right there is where the script fell apart.
Oh, absolutely. That was absolutely a problem. But it doesn't make it a prequel, just makes it a bad thing to put in the movie.
Not only that, half the story is explaining what the space jockey is. That's been one of the biggest questions from the first Alien. What is that? What is the space jockey? Now we know, kind of.
Yeah, but that, again, that just means it's part of the universe. It happened in the universe beforehand. But the structure of the story is not trying to give you a sense of these events directly led to those events.
So you don't think that in Prometheus Paradise, which is what the second one is going to be called, by the way, you don't think that it's going to end kind of like the Thing prequel last year, where it ended perfectly, where the dog ran into the snow, and it picks up right where the original thing, well, the reboot of the original thing.
I didn't feel like it was going to be perfectly lined up like that either, but I did feel it had more of a prequel sense than some people are giving it credit for.
Well, what I'm saying is, do you think in the second one, what's her name? Numi's character. She's going to crash. Dr. Shaw. She's going to crash in that ship, and the xenomorph is going to come out of her, and that's the space jockey that we see in Alien.
No, I think they're going to give her own story, and she's going to go off.
Because of that, then this is just a story just all over the place.
Yeah, no, and that's the point. They built a universe in Aliens, and now they're exploring a different aspect of it. Let me ask you this. Are the Star Wars novels that happen in the world of Star Wars before the movies, like, are those prequel novels? Or are they just novels set in the universe, and so there's a bunch of references and things?
Well, yeah, there's both. There's some that are directly prequels, and there's some that are just set in the universe. But I feel like with this movie that it can go either way at this point. So what Henry's saying is the next one, is it going to line it up to actually fall in line with prequel, or is it going to take it away?
And I don't think that they're going to do that.
Why didn't you explain it this way? The EU actually is part of, it is canon now. As of what was Attack of the Clones episode 2, Attack of the Clones, George Lucas said, yeah, everything in the novels is canon from that point on.
Right.
Before he said, what books? They don't exist.
Right.
So yeah.
So it's all possible.
It's all like a big universe, and that makes it a very big sandbox to play in. And I think that you're limiting, if the fans start expecting it to be a prequel, you're limiting the story and the scope of the story, and they're just going to be disappointed again. And I would be really a lot happier if they don't take it in that direction.
Or we're redefining what a prequel is.
No, there's words mean things.
Hey, they change all the time.
No, well, okay, but
you never know.
Congratulations. Where's that token you were showing me? You got to give it to her. She left you speechless. Kind of hard to do.
No, she can't have my amazing, awesome, exclusive California Brown Coats challenge coin that you can only get from us when we're down at San Diego Comic-Con this year.
That's a big hint,
from
by the
you
way.
today.
And we are going to do a big Comic-Con show. But back to Prometheus. Prometheus is a couple of things about it. One, it's become Inception. opposite, sort of. Inception, the reason why people went to see it 4 or 5 different times is because of word of mouth. And whether you cared about Christopher Nolan or his Batman movies or not, you had to go see this movie that nobody got. Here's my totem over here. That nobody got, and does it fall, does it not fall? They're still talking about it today in 2012 in a good way. Prometheus, it's quite the opposite. Like I said, it's right down the middle. Either you really, really like it, or you really, really hate it, or you just don't get what the hell it was all about. Ironic that in 1982, not Star Trek, which we will do in a little bit, 1982 was another sci-fi movie from we wasn't even a Sir yet, but from Ridley Scott, Blade Runner. What? There's some people out there that haven't seen Blade Runner?
Oh my god.
God, no, but Blade Runner is so good. Why wouldn't you see it? Why?
It's become kind of a cult classic. In back then, the conversations during its release were kind of like what Prometheus is getting. They don't get it. It makes no sense. It's a convoluted story. They love the fact that it's Harrison Ford, it's Han Solo, all that stuff. But again, there's some people who haven't seen it, really.
Well, they should fix that.
We should.
And they should know why.
Yeah, because we have Louise to tell you all about it. Here she is.
Geek Movie Rewind. Movie Rewind. The movies that made you a geek. Except for the part where you didn't see them. Here's the Geek Speak Show's resident movie geek, Louise Ducray.
Hi guys, Louise here with another installment of Movie Rewind. So, Prometheus. Yeah, that happened. And anyway, this week I'm going to talk to you about Blade Runner. This sci-fi film noir masterpiece is pretty high on the list of important films that people I meet seem not to have seen. If somebody never showed it to you and you never picked it up from one of these things we used to have called video stores, then it stands to reason you may have gotten this far in life without experiencing it. And that's okay. There's time to remedy that. And even if you haven't seen it, I guarantee you've seen the tendrils of its legacy everywhere. That's the thing about these films. Not only are they fantastic in their own right, but they've so pervaded our culture, become so much a part of the science fiction vocabulary, that it's like you're missing out on lots of subtle nods if you haven't seen them. The Fifth Element and AI both feature direct homages to Blade Runner. I would also say Gattaca, and I know I mentioned it when I was talking about Alien, but Firefly, very much so. Oh, have you heard the song More Human Than Human by White Zombie? Yeah, that's from this too. Blade Runner is based loosely on Philip K. Dick's novel Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? Albeit so loosely that that's the last time I'm going to mention it. The film divided critics and fans at the time of its release in 1982, and it divides people to this day. Is Deckard a replicant? Is he not? Does it matter? Does the theatrical or the director's cut do more justice to the narrative? What exactly happened? I say all interpretations are valid, but that's because I fail at being a film nerd here. I don't actually have a strong opinion either way. Feel free to sway me by sending your arguments and whack job theorizing to Louise at thegeekspeakshow.com. I'm not going to fight you on this one, and I love to hear different viewpoints about this movie. Regarding Deckard, I can see both the "it's just so obvious, can't you see" side and the "you're reading way too much into this" side. Although I will say, pay attention to the irises of their eyes. And I can enjoy either cut of the film, so I can't tell you which one to watch. Although I have to say, the original theatrical cut features a pulpy voiceover that Harrison Ford himself is known to dislike, while the director's cut features more romantic subplot and makeouts that make me vaguely uncomfortable. While I prefer the theatrical ending to the director's cut, my personal version of Blade Runner actually just ends with Edward James Olmos's last line. Set to a great score by Vangelis. Seriously, what happened to scores like these? They're so awesome and so of this particular time. The titles at the beginning inform us we are in Los Angeles in November 2019, which you'll notice is chillingly close to now. In this dark and rainy future dystopia, giant corporations create and market humanoid robots known as replicants. They are used on off-world colonies for labor and pleasure, but their presence has since been banned on Earth. Blade Runners are bounty hunters whose job it is to hunt down and retire replicants who defy the ban. The plot of the movie centers around a group of rogue replicants who have escaped and are running around Los Angeles, some wreaking havoc, some just searching for answers. Retired Blade Runner Rick Deckard, against his protestations, is called in to round them up and exterminate them, as he is the best of the best. And as we've learned from everything that ever happened in every story ever, taking one last job, never a great plan. Deckard, as you are no doubt aware, is played by Harrison Ford, who plays him as pretty much the same guy he plays in most things. Harried, annoyed by everything, and still picking up the ladies. His co-stars include skinny Edward James Olmos as Officer Gaff, a dandy of ambiguous ethnic origin who has a fabulously eclectic fashion sense and a penchant for folding tiny narrative-specific origami, and Sean Young as Rachel, the ethically questionable love interest. As for the replicants, they include Brian James as Leon, Joanna Cassidy as Zora, Daryl Hannah as Pris, and Rutger Hauer as Roy Batty. Pris is the basic pleasure model, air quotes, who comes across as sort of delightful and guileless and sweet and then later terrifying. Hannah plays her with an interesting lack of pretense, which I guess would be a good trait for a sexy robot to have. The leader of the ragtag band of replicants is Rutger Hauer's sensibly maniacal Roy Batty. He is so great in this. He's like Michael Fassbender in X-Men First Class. Like everybody is great, but he's really, really great. His final words, basically Shakespeare. What makes the replicants interesting is that even though they're sort of the bad guys, their badness is not cut and dried. These particular models have been programmed with a 4-year lifespan, and they suffer the horror of this knowledge, and like any other creature, they want more life. I mean, a know-your-own expiration date, their fear of ceasing to be is very human. Deckard's ability to exterminate them without compunction, what makes him the best of the best, is, well, not. There's a lot going on there, and deeper scholars than I have been at it for decades now. Do yourself a favor one slow workday afternoon and Google it. You can really slide down the rabbit hole of cinema as philosophical discourse. Enrich yourselves. It's fun. Now, if you don't dig on all that, you still gotta watch it for the visuals. If you watch it for no other reason, watch it for that. Blade Runner introduced a pivotal aesthetic vocabulary to the world of science fiction. The production design on this film is not only awesome, but seminal. The dirty lived-in look, it's dark and stained with rain, desolate and cluttered, a low-class future full of hand-me-downs and once-new things that have become old. It's clear that just because some people own corporations and have shiny new things and the luxury of clean space and the time to enjoy all this, doesn't mean the majority do. That much hasn't changed in the far distant future of 2019. There are details, God I love details, that look like the prop department could have scrounged them from the dumpster behind Restoration Hardware. As I mentioned, The Fifth Element and Firefly borrow heavily but respectfully from this film, with its mixture of future and past, as well as the amalgamation of Western and Eastern influences. It's got this great sort of pan-Asian 1940s aesthetic mixed in with strange plastics and odd angles, which extends even to the wardrobe. Rachel has this severe rockabilly thing going on, while Edward James Olmos as Gaff looks like he raided a thrift store while his inhibitions were chemically lowered. Other stories have done this with different time periods. Gattaca does it wonderfully with its sleek 1920s class drama, and Neil Stephenson's book The Diamond Age and its neo-Victorian dystopia. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that in a future where technology has advanced spectacularly, while society remains deeply flawed, that we would revert fashion-wise to an earlier time. I mean, look around. Another thing I love about the look of this movie is the use of the gorgeous turn-of-the-century Bradbury building in Los Angeles for key scenes, including the climactic scenes between Deckard, Pris, and Batty, which, by the way, trigger warning for creepy toys and anybody who is traumatized by Are You Afraid of the Dark? Like several of Ridley Scott's films, Blade Runner can be experienced on several levels. It can be just a straight sci-fi film, atmospheric, original, drama played out against the backdrop of a bleak space age, robots and spaceships, and you'll walk out of the theater fulfilled just fine. Or it can be a study on the nature of what it means to be human, what it is to be alive. It works on all levels, and for me, I'm fine if nobody ever comes out and settles on a definitive interpretation of what it's supposed to be. That it inspires such debate and contention after all this time is testament to its greatness. I'm Louise for the Geek Speak Show Movie Rewind. Send along your opinions, disputes, and fan mail with little hearts drawn on to louise@thegeekspeakshow.com. Have a great week.
That's the Geek Movie Rewind. Agree? Disagree? Send your comments or suggestions to Louise at thegeekspeakshow.com. You found the only geek culture showcast. This is the Geek Speak Show.
Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Its continuing mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no one has gone before.
Anybody wonder what we're going to talk about? Welcome back to the Geek Speak Show. So, thanks, Louise. That is why you guys should watch Blade Runner if you haven't already. Have the same kind of discussions we'll be having about Prometheus. So, again, this is going to be a big celebration. No cake. Nobody brought pie even?
No, I've got pie back at my place, so we'll just head back out there afterward.
30 years ago, a couple of weeks ago, but 30 years ago, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan premiered in movie theaters. I was, I think, 8, 9 years old at the time. Loved it even more as the years went by. Can't believe it's 30 years, so we're going to have director Nicholas Meyer on in just a little bit. Let's kick things off, however, with somebody who's been here before and is part of the Star Trek world now, from IDW Comics, Scott Tipton. Hey, Scott, welcome back to the Geek Speak Show.
Hey, good to be back.
Good to have you back. So we're going to talk about a simulation squared in a little bit, because now from the last time you were here, you can talk a little bit more about it. But before we do that, you and your brother David being such a big Star Trek fans, let me asking you, why do you think Wrath of Khan is such a great, even to 30 years later, such a great film, Star Trek film?
It's, by far the best of the Star Trek films, I think. And the biggest part of it is just Nicholas Meyer as a storyteller. And he's unparalleled as far as knowing what to do to make this story work for people who love Star Trek, and also to make it work for people who don't know anything about Star Trek. You can come into that movie cold and not know a thing and get drawn right into it.
Yeah, you're not just saying that because he's coming up after you, right? It actually is because of Nicholas Meyer.
I'm long on the record as being like a huge Wrath of Khan fan. You could put that movie on at any point just randomly, and I can just recite dialogue. That movie is my probably top 5 films.
Yeah, and you and your brother, you actually got to play with the Khan character by bridging the gap between Space Seed, where Khan was first introduced, to Wrath of Khan. So how was that, playing around in that backyard? How was that?
It was at once just so much fun and absolutely terrifying, because I do love that film so much, and just the fear of getting something wrong. The fear of writing this story to bridge that period between the TV series and the film, and like, oh man, I can't screw this up. I can't. I double checked and double crossed every T and dotted every I to make sure that everything lined up right, and then also just trying to make a story to span those missing years that I felt lived up to what Meyer did in that film.
Well, and then at that point, when do you feel like you actually get to add something to the world and to the universe? Like, or were there any moments where you're just like, and now that thing exists because of me. That was my idea, and now it's in the world, and I put it there.
It's the tricky. That's always a big point of contention with fans, whether something is really canon or not. Whether or not it really happened. And my take on it always is, if I like a story, whether it's in comics or in novels or in the films, if I like a story and it sings to me, I respond to it, then I consider it as happening. And hopefully, when fans read the book, and if I can strike those notes with them so they feel, yeah, this feels like it really happened, that's the best you can hope for.
I agree. If I love it, I'm going to consider it part of the universe.
Right. And if I don't, it didn't happen.
Exactly.
It is a fan's prerogative.
Yeah, as far as comic books go, as far as I'm concerned, the Blue Beetle's still alive. I never read that story. It didn't happen.
Well, and there's so many villains in the Star Trek universe to love and to hate, and everybody responds to Khan in some way. Why do you think that he ranks as one of the top favorites of fans all around?
Well, I think there's 2 reasons. The one reason, of course, is just Montalban's performance in both the episode and in the film. In both those cases, he brings so much to it. And the take on him was always that he chews the scenery, and that's not fair, because he has highs, but he also has lows. He brings it down. You really get he really sells the emotion of what's happened to him, and that makes him sympathetic. All the best villains have to be sympathetic. You need to be able to sympathize with Khan. And then, as far as why he strikes the best from a story standpoint, is I think it's just that it's one of the few times when Kirk has an arch nemesis. Somebody whose goals are as much about punishing Kirk as they are about what he wants. Kirk doesn't have that many like that.
No, he doesn't. And what's fun to realize is that you don't actually, when they were filming that together, they weren't filming at the same time. So Montalban he did it like weeks before Shatner did, because it was all like interacting on the screen. So you have to think about the fact that as actors, they were taking these scenes and they were just putting it all out there, and they weren't even playing off of each other's energy. But even so, they created this really amazing dynamic.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's a testament to what a strong writer and director Meyer is, in that if you don't stop to think about it, you don't realize that Shatner and Montalban are never in the same room.
No, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to the storytelling.
Exactly. You'd never even realize it until you stop to think. I mean, if they made that film today, they would have shoehorned in a big, overdone fight scene.
Well,
which would be completely unnecessary.
But speaking of doing it today, I mean, right, we've got this next Star Trek II coming out with J.J. Abrams. Do you want to see Khan reimagined? Do you want to see him brought into this new version of the Star Trek universe?
I would rather they didn't. I'm not one to pass judgment, because I like the first film a lot, and it so exceeded my expectations. So I'm willing to give Abrams the benefit of the doubt on pretty much anything he wants to do with a new film. But I also suspect that he's wise enough to know to leave Khan alone.
Oh, we're so on that same page. Like the fear that it wouldn't be done right, and then if he did do it right, and if he did it just right, you're just like, oh, my head. That's my head exploding in the theater. But if it's not head explodingly good, you're just going to be disappointed.
Yeah, and I mean, of all the films and all the characters, that's the one that is the most intimidating to try and reboot.
Yeah, and I got to say also, as a JJ fan, I agree with you, Scott, that I trust, kind of like I always say in Nolan, I trust. Same thing with JJ. I would not only do I trust him, but I expect a lot more than just rehashing something Nicholas Meyer already did. I mean, the way they did the 2009 Star Trek, they can literally take it wherever they want. So why go somewhere, no pun intended, somewhere where man has been before?
Right. And I think that, I mean, I would have to imagine that if he does decide to use Khan, which I still don't think he will, just because it doesn't sound like something they'd go with, he would at least base it on the episode Khan, where it's you're taking just that basic premise of the genetic Superman and his followers and run with it, and not try and like repeat beat for beat the Wrath of Khan film.
Right, you sort of take the idea that you have an Uberman who ruled the world for a short period of time, but what does that look like in this universe?
Right, because so much of Wrath of Khan, so much of the themes are about aging and about kind of accepting the fact that you're not who you were 30 years ago, and none of those notes would work in a new film.
Having said that, however, I do have to say Benedict Cumberbatch, who is playing the villain in Star Trek II, looks a lot like Joachim from Star Trek II. So they could go that direction.
Well, I just can't see there being a big Joaquin fan base or something. We need to make this a Joaquin film. It's going to be huge.
Well, you know what, though? With Benedict Cumberbatch playing it would all of a sudden exist, and I would be the president.
Yeah, that would help.
It does help when you've got somebody like that playing a part.
I mean, he is fantastic, despite the fact that he sounds like he should be attending Hogwarts with that name.
Oh, it's the most English of all the English names. You can't go into saying it.
Benedict Cumberbatch and the Sorcerer's Stone.
It also sounds dirty. I can't get away from that. I just blush a little bit. Sounding. Yeah.
So we're talking to Scott Tipton, the writer of Khan Ruling in Hell, which probably not available in your stores. You can ask for it, or you can go to Blast Off Comics. You have on our link sticker that's on there. We'll talk about that in just a little bit with Scott. And him and his brother David, they're also writing currently something that's really, 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 really popular. Trust me, I know, because I've looked for it in comic book stores and it's sold out.
They went into second printing. It's ridiculous.
Yes, as we record this, it's New Comics Wednesday. Its second printing is in stores. I guess because they're probably gone.
They're
now.
Probably already sold out. Good job, sir.
Yeah, that is
not too bad.
The Star Trek Doctor Who crossover, two biggest franchises in science fiction. Talk a little bit about Assimilation Squared.
This has just been a fantastic experience so far to take these two franchises, these two mythologies, and find ways to kind of mix them together while being true to both. It's again, it's kind of like the Khan story, and it's both the most exciting thing to do and absolutely terrifying. But we're having a great time with it. Yeah. And what's been really fun about it has been the fact that the response has been great. we were really afraid that both the like Trek loyalists and Doctor Who fans would kind of like knock the idea off as just kind of a mercenary money grab, and instead everyone's like, that's the best thing ever. When's it coming out? Which was great to hear, but then also kind of like made me a little anxious. But then the reaction when the book hit, the reviews were really, really positive. People seemed to like what we're doing, and then the sales have been pretty good.
Well, and did you expect it to be this good? I mean, obviously people are going to like the idea, and when you first started talking about it, they were like, oh, cool. But did you expect this kind of reaction?
No. No, you always hope for it, but I'm always just happy if people are buying the books and people and I don't get angry letters from Star Trek fans. So I mean,
that's positive.
The fact that the response has been so good, and also that people kind of got what we were doing in the first issue, because I was a little bit nervous going in, because in the first issue, again, spoiler alert, but you can go buy it now because it's back in stores. The first issue has a fair amount more Doctor Who elements in it than it does Star Trek, and that was by design. In that our thinking was that there are probably more Star Trek fans who need to learn about Doctor Who than there are Doctor Who fans who need to learn about Star Trek.
Absolutely.
So what we wanted to do with that first issue was set the tone right off with, okay, we're in a Star Trek universe with some really bad things going on. And after we have this opening sequence that kind of like sets the stage for the big threat, then we go right into kind of what we wanted to do is tell a classic Doctor Who adventure, and just set up the characters, set up the world, set up who he is, how he operates, and what he's like. And that's another big chunk of that first issue. And I was concerned that people would pick this up and say, well, where's Picard? Where's all the Star Trek? And it's a long game. It's an 8-issue series. You got to give it some time to get into it. And everyone got that, and everyone seemed to really dig it, which is great. Well,
and you also need to set up the dynamic with the Doctor and the companions, and who are these people,
right,
and what is all of those relationships. Because you're right, that's where the I certainly wouldn't have known about Doctor Who 4 years ago, so it feels like...
Well, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But with...
And...
Go ahead.
And so that was also kind of the fun writing challenge, was finding a way to tell a very fun little 12-page mini Doctor Who adventure, and along the way seeding in all the facts you need to know about who they are, but not just doing it through a straight kind of like a very easy synopsis page, but doing it through character and doing it through action, and finding ways to explain who they are as they talk to each other, and explain who they are through what they do. And that was really fun.
Well, and that's also the best part of what it is to read it, because you're getting that, and you're finding like, oh, that clicks, and that clicks, and that clicks, and that all feels right. And I think you're doing a really good job of staying true to both of those universes and explaining that without it feeling like I'm getting just exposition all the way through. So,
well, good.
Yeah.
I'm glad that's coming across. Like for number 2, we turn around again, where we'll start off number 2 with a little mini Next Generation adventure, kind of establishing the Enterprise D crew and who they are, where they are in their particular timeline in their history, and get to know the characters, so that, because I think there are going to be some Doctor Who fans who aren't particularly giant Star Trek aficionados, and I want them to get that same kind of, get their feet wet with all these characters, which they're going to be seeing a lot of.
So you say that we're going to be getting more Star Trek in the next one, but what's coming up after that, when they're really like together and these universes are both introduced? Where are you going to take us?
Well, the fun thing, and this is something I couldn't talk about last time because it was one of our bigger secrets, but now the covers have been released. Number 3, we have a flashback involving Captain Kirk and the original Enterprise crew and the Tom Baker Doctor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yay. I'm very excited
Which
for that.
Which again, it was so, I mean, and that was the fun thing, is that we knew we were doing that, but in that first round of interviews, when the project was announced, we didn't want to give that away. And so everyone's asking, well, what are we going to see? Are we seeing lots of doctors? Are we seeing lots of different Enterprise crews? And we just tried to dance around the issue, because I was really wanting to get let people enjoy that surprise.
I'm doing my
and then
dance.
And then the cover of number 3 hits, and it's like, Shatner wrestling with a Cyberman. And it's like, okay, we're losing some of that surprise, but that's all right.
It's worth it.
So yeah, it's fun. And again, I've written a fair amount of original series Trek as well. So getting to get Kirk and Spock in here and just do some classic Kirkisms is great.
Oh, are you gonna try to like evoke the Shatner style of delivery with a lot of ellipses?
with writing Shatner, I don't try and do the delivery as much as I just try and get the kind of like the mood and get the Kirk character is always a bit of a trickster. That's kind of what the way he said, even though in the way he approaches strategy and the way he approaches combat. And so I just try and like get some of his like the Shatner smoothness in there, but also have him be kind of tongue in cheek.
You know, I just made this connection, but both Kirk and the Doctor are puckish. They both really delight in that turnabout and that twisting a situation on its side, seeing it from a different angle, and then finding the solution. And wow, that's going to be amazing.
Yeah, and especially doing that with the Fourth Doctor, with the Tom Baker Doctor, because again, it's a tricky storytelling thing to do. Is that, you know, there's so many new characters who have to meet each other, and you don't want to spend all your time with introductions.
No.
And how do you do this? And so we found good ways around that in number 2, and then we're like, oh, now we've got another new crew and another Doctor, and I felt like we were back in the same in the same zone again. And finding a way to get around that was fun to do, and I think it worked out.
Yeah, so it's called Assimilation Squared. It's second printing out as we record this on New Comics Wednesday. Probably sold out in stores. I've looked for it. By the way, thanks, Scott, for sending me the PDF version, but I do have to go buy this one. It has to be in my collection. Did you say it was a limited edition, or how many issues is this going to be?
It's 8-issue series. 8
issues? Okay.
Yes.
So again, go out there in comic book stores, get it there. Before we let you go, we got to have you talk about Blast Off Comics. That's something that you were talked about last time you were here. So talk a little bit about Blast Off Comics.
Blast Off Comics is an offshoot of my long-running comic site, which was Comics 101, which is all about comic book history. Now, every week I give a little comic lesson or just a column about what's happening in comics these days. And Blast Off Comics is something new. It's a separate sister site which focuses on vintage comics, not just discussion, but actually on retail. And what we're doing at Blast Off, besides I've got a staff of writers over there just talking about, we have a different theme every month. This month is Spider-Man month. And so we've got different Spider-Man articles and columns. But also, we're the exclusive brokers for the comic collections of Mark Waid and Harlan Ellison.
Ooh.
And so we have some amazing books on the site. And then if you buy a book from the Mark Waid collection, you get a certificate from Mark Waid signed saying this is from his collection. And Mark Waid's comic collection is legendary. He's got like most everything Gold and Silver Age is out there, and it's actually too much for us to have on the site all at once. So we're slowly kind of rolling it out. The same with Harlan. Harlan's comic collection is maddeningly large. It makes I need to sit down when I think about it. And so and what we've been doing too is we've got video features with both Mark and with Harlan talking about their collections, talking about their books.
Okay, so
go ahead,
Scott.
And then so that way, so like this week we've got we had Mark Waid talking about the Superboy comics he loved putting together, and then those comics are up for sale. And we had Harlan showing off just a bit of his collection, including like his copy of X-Men 1, which was signed by Stan back in 1967.
Oh. So calling all
rich nerds.
Well, all comic book nerds. Go to the link section.
And it's nice that you have the video so that you can get that. Yeah. You can get that no matter what.
Yeah, the videos are all there, so you can enjoy the videos. But and even with the comics, I mean, there is the expensive stuff, but there is some affordable stuff too. A lot of Mark's books are on the cheaper side, so it's not all like in the thousands of dollars. We're looking at some great. I mean, I had made a promise to myself that I was not going to buy any of these books for my own collection because this is a business. I'm not doing that. And then I stumbled across 2 of Mark Waid's issues of the Justice Society from 1947.
Yeah, of course you have to have it.
You have to have that.
I need to have these. So those are in my house now. But and again, I mean, there's lots of stuff in there for varying prices. So it's not only the uber rich nerds. We cater to all levels of nerds.
Exactly. Well, and the best part is if you can't buy it, at least you get to watch the videos about it and drool over it. So either way, we need to check out Blast Off Comics.
Yeah, and I'm assuming they can find your titles there also.
Oh yeah, and also all of my books are available there on trade, and then we also have the single issues for Star Trek Doctor Who up there right now, first printings, so you can get those as well.
Okay, there you go.
There you go.
It's
So now you know how to get 'em.
blastoffcomics.com. Go to our link section where you're listening to the podcast. Just go up there. It's right there. So Scott Tipton, again, writer on Khaaann, Rulin' in Hell. Can they find that one on Blast Off if they didn't get it the first time around?
I believe we have some trades for that also. Yeah.
Yeah. If you didn't get it,
I'm not sure if
you didn't get it the first time around, you got to get, especially if you're a big Star Trek II Khaaann fan, you got to get this one. It's a phenomenally written story. And, of course, Simulation Squared. If you can't find it in the comic book stores like I can't, maybe you have better luck on Blast Off Comics. So, Scott...
Also, by the way, almost all the Star Trek stuff and also Star Trek Doctor Who are all available digitally. Comixology and the iTunes Store.
Yeah, so those of you who have the iPads and all that stuff...
Oh, I have all those apps, yeah.
That's why I was looking at you when I said that. Yeah, you can get it on there. So, Scott, thanks a lot for coming on. You're welcome back anytime, you know that. And we'll continue to follow Simulation Squared.
Thanks a lot. Always a pleasure.
Okay, Scott, thanks a lot.
It's time for the Geek Speak Show Book Club. Our books or graphic novels. Tell us what your favorites are. Books at thegeekspeakshow.com.
All right, so my book for this week is Scott Tipton's book. No, we don't do comic books here. No, mine is very apropos for what we're doing today. Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan photo story. Yes, you guys remember it from thousands of years ago. By Richard J. Enoble, I guess it is, based on a screenplay by Jack B. Sowards and Harv Bennett, and uncredited Nicholas Meyer, who we'll have on in just a few seconds. So that's my book. It's a lot of pictures, a lot of words, but it's pretty cool. It's Star Trek II.
But it's a book.
Yes, it is a book. Has pages, cover, everything.
Wow. Does it have an ISBN?
I don't know. What is an ISBN? A missile? Does it go intercontinental? You gonna explain?
No, I'm not, because you make fun of me for nerding out about ISBN so much.
Yes, you guys want to find out why she's one of the co-hosts on the Geek Speak show? Go ahead and explain ISBN numbers.
ISBN number is a unique identifier for a book, and it gets assigned by a publisher for all products. And the way that you assign an ISBN is that if it has a new cover or new content or anything about its packaging is different from whatever ISBN it had before, it needs a new ISBN. There's also awesome math involved with an ISBN. The check digit at the end, not just a randomly assigned number. No, that's an algorithm of all of the previous numbers of that ISBN. I won't go into the history of ISBN 10s or 13s because Henry is already giving me a look.
No, I'm just thinking I got to call my buddy Chris Hardwick. I think I found a new nerd for him. Anyway, what are you guys' books?
So mine is a visual dictionary, and I don't know the ISBN, so sorry.
You can look it up. It's on Amazon.
You can look it up later. But I thought of this book because this week I've been going through all of my Lego sets that are built and displayed in my room. Yeah, I have them built, I understand.
No, that's the proper way to display Lego. Built.
Yes, exactly. See? Okay. So I went through all of them. I was disassembling and assembling and doing all these things, and I thought, you know what?
Legos assemble.
Yes.
Oh my god, that's the best thing ever.
That's a new idea. Save that for later. But I have the Lego Star Wars Visual Dictionary, and it's awesome, not only because it's Legos and Star Wars, right? We get the idea, but because it goes through all of the current Lego sets that are the Star Wars sets from the very beginning. So you can track all of them that have been released and check off the ones you have and go online and try to order the old ones and see the differences. Did it come with a special figure? And it came with a special figure. Oh, yes. I love it.
There's a little mini-mate? Like your own little special mini-mate for that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I love mini-mates. I have Lego Rock Band at home, and it's like the best rock band.
See, Lego equals good, so Visual Dictionary, go get it.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'm switching up what I'm doing for my book club because we were talking about prequels before on Prometheus, and I want to talk to you about what a proper prequel looks like, and that is The Hobbit.
Episode 1. Oh.
That is...
Hey,
Ew, get that off me. Ew.
No fighting in here, because I'll have to kill all of you, so...
Okay, well then, setting aside the contentious topic, no, I'm going for The Hobbit. The Hobbit is what a prequel really is. It's set in the universe. It sets the stage for the things that happen later on. It references things. You get a deeper understanding of things that are happening later on in the world. You get to really dig into it. And also The Hobbit is an amazing story. It's the first Tolkien that I read. If you haven't read it and the movie's coming out, be reading it now.
A good time.
You want to read it before you see the movie. It's so much better. I'm gonna love the Hobbit movie. I am completely biased in this matter, but still, read the book. It's so good, and it's a proper prequel. It does the job. And that's The Hobbit. Go read it. It has ISBNs as well.
That's the Geek Speak Show Book Club. Tell us what your favorite books or graphic novels are. Books at thegeekspeakshow.com. On June 4th, 1982, Star Trek II: Wrath of Khan opened in movie theaters nationwide. It earned $14 million in its first 3 days, the largest opening weekend gross in history at that time. Star Trek II went on to earn $78 million in the U.S. and gave us one of the most memorable lines in movie history. More importantly, Star Trek II: Wrath of Khan breathed new life to the Star Trek franchise, leading to 4 more movies featuring the original crew of the USS Enterprise. Today, the Geek Speak Show celebrates the 30th anniversary of Star Trek II: Wrath of Khan by welcoming back the director of Star Trek II, Nicholas Meyer.
And as promised, here he is, Mr. Nicholas Meyer, director of Star Trek II: Wrath of Khan. Nicholas, welcome back to the Geek Speak Show.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming back. So again, we're celebrating the 30-year anniversary of Star Trek II: Wrath of Khan. First thing we got to start with, of course, let's have you reflect on 30 years after its release, Star Trek II.
Well, I have to preface this by suggesting that artists are not necessarily the best or most competent, and certainly not the most definitive or the definitive judges of what they've done. So my opinion and my reflections are, purely subjective. All I can say is I never expected anything like the sort of sentimental track record that the film has produced. It was a job that I was very excited about at the time and got very involved with and emotionally involved with. But I don't think I ever anticipated that it was going to have the sort of shelf life that it's had thus far, and that so many people seem very gratifyingly, I might add, to be so powerfully affected by it. I've heard amazing and very sweet stories.
Yeah, because we should go.
Glad I was part of it. Sorry.
I was going to say we should go back a little bit and tell people, the few that don't know, you actually weren't, quote unquote, a Star Trek person when you took on this job, right?
I'd never seen Star Trek.
Yeah. So what actually made you say, yeah, let me jump on board the Enterprise and its original crew?
Well, 2 things really. One was that I met Harv Bennett, the producer assigned to the project, and I got along with him very well. And he started showed me the first movie, and he showed me some of the original episodes, and he showed me the Space Seed episode, and I kept thinking, this reminds me of something that I really do know and like, and it took me a while to remember what it was. But there was a whole series of novels by an English author named C.S. Forrester about an English sea captain during the Napoleonic Wars named Captain Horatio Hornblower. And it occurred to me while watching these episodes in the first movie that Star Trek was really sort of Hornblower in outer space. And I suddenly thought, wow, it could be a lot of fun to make a movie about destroyers or submarines or however you wanted to characterize them, and that was something I felt I did know how to do. So I just transferred it to outer space in my mind when I was writing it.
Yeah, and obviously, looking back 30 years later, the Star Trek fans, we love it. We consider one of the best of all the Star Trek films with the original crew. But, and you mentioned this also in your memoir, The View from the Bridge, there was one person who didn't like it, and that is Captain Kirk, William Shatner. Explain to us why he didn't like the script when he first read it.
Well, it's sort of hard. I mean, I should, add that he came around. When he first read the script, and this was only the second movie that I'd ever directed. It wasn't the second movie that I'd ever written, but I was learning really, or I learned in the process, sort of how to write for a star. Bill Shatner is not a particularly egotistical person, but he was very, very protective about the character of Captain Kirk, and he understood very clearly that Kirk is the lead, the locomotive, the engine that pulled the whole thing. And I think I said in my memoir, basically, Bill wanted to be sure that he was the first man through the door, which is a way of saying how you write for the leading actor. And he's excitable, as many performers are, and he came in saying, well, the script is a disaster, and I didn't know what to make of that because everybody else seemed to like it a lot. And then as I listened to him and began to understand that what he really wanted, as I put it, to be the first man through the door. So then I went back, and in 24 hours I had, adjusted it and sent it back to him, and he suddenly proclaimed it to be a work of genius. And so I learned a thing or two.
Yeah, and Star Trek II has a lot of memorable scenes and lines. Like in that little intro, we heard the Khaaann line. You've probably heard it countless times. The most memorable, obviously, is the death of Spock at the end.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it wasn't we should say it wasn't your idea to do that. It was already in the script when you received it. But was it your idea to film the Remember scene, which led to possibly Spock returning?
No. Let me be clear about a few things here. One, there were 5 separate Star Trek II screenplays written by different people. And basically what the final screenplay that I came up with was basically I went through the 5 scripts with the producers, and we pulled out things that we liked. We weren't, there was no doctrine about it. We pulled out characters that we liked, we pulled out storylines that we liked, we pulled out scenes that we liked, occasionally perhaps a line of dialogue, although I think in the end most of the dialogue was written by me and some by Harv Bennett. And the death of Spock was not the death of Spock that's in the final, in the movie that you see. That was written by me. It was just in one of the movies he dies, and I don't remember anything about it other than, oh yes, well, let's have him die. And the Remember thing was an add-on because what happened when the studio finally saw the movie, and they had sort of bought into the whole idea of Spock dying, but now they saw the movie and they began to think, wow, do we really want him to die? And I really did want him to die because I thought anything else was just a dry hustle on people's emotions that were going to be involved in it, but I sort of didn't really understand the enormous commercial forces that were at work and some psychological or emotional forces as well. So they put in the Remember stuff, they put in the coffin on the planet, all in preparation, laying the pipe for his return. When they asked me to direct that movie, which they did, I said no, I didn't know how to do resurrections, so I passed on it. But I'm just as happy that they brought him back. I just couldn't be me that did it.
Yeah, and back then we didn't have Twitter or the internet or anything that we have now, but we did have Starlog magazine, which is something I used to read. And there were rumors that Spock was going to die in the next Star Trek. And was it in the original script that you received the fake out death at the end when you're doing the Kobayashi Maru test?
The Kobayashi Maru test was in the middle of one of those other drafts, and Spock was not in it. I moved the Kobayashi Maru's sequence to the front of the movie, and we were getting all these funny letters from people, very upset about the possibility of Spock dying. And I remember I was sitting in a screening room with Harv, and we were looking at some special effects tests, and I was sitting behind him, and I mumbled something about, hell, why don't we kill him off in the first scene? and Harv whirled around and said, wow, that's fantastic. And I was just being funny. But, Harv, sort of recognized the enormous promise of that, because it really disarms the audience. Well, what I learned as a filmmaker in my career is that nobody remembers the first 5 minutes of any movie. It takes you 5 minutes to sort of get into the wavelength, and by the end, you've forgotten what people said or did in those first 5 minutes. So in the first 5 minutes, we allayed everybody's darkest fears that Spock was going to die, and then by the end of the movie, they'd completely forgotten that that's what this movie was about, because so much other hugger-mugger was going on. And then they were, seriously blasted between the eyes when they see that empty chair.
Yeah, no, I absolutely was. I remember just being blown away. It was I was very little when this movie came out.
Me too. I made the movie when I was 12.
But it was Spock and it was Gandalf that were like my big first character deaths in terms of stories and literature. And I think they both just taught me a lesson about characters. And I didn't know that, I knew that he came back, but in that moment and in that emotional intensity, it really hit me. But I'm wondering if this was your first time, though, having to respond to fans and being responsible for a character where there's so much invested in that connection, and then hearing back, well, I guess we have to care about their opinion, which is different when you're working on a novel or working in isolation or working on something that hasn't existed before.
Well, a complicated question, but in the first part is no, it was not my first experience with fans, because I wrote a novel called The 7% Solution. And The 7% Solution is a novel in which Sherlock Holmes meets Sigmund Freud. And it became, for a time, the #1 best-selling novel in the United States. And there are a lot of Sherlock Holmes fans, and one of the most controversial aspects of Holmes is the fact that he was a cocaine addict. It's so controversial that many fans kept insisting or would insist that this was not the case, and that when in the second Sherlock Holmes story he takes down a syringe and injects himself with cocaine in the second story and tells Watson that it's a 7% solution, that he's actually teasing. I mean, in other words, you go to rather torturous lengths to keep your hero without feet of clay. But what I told the fans then and what I would tell fans now is two things. One, art is not a democracy. It doesn't get done by committee, and you don't just sort of vote on stuff. Art is a dictatorship. It's government by consent of the governed, which is to say, if you don't like it, close the book, leave the theater, but you're looking at somebody's vision and version of how something's supposed to be. That's number one. Number two, I think it represents a misunderstanding of the difference or a confusion between heroes and gods, and that to take the example of Holmes, then people felt that, I diminished his heroic stature by portraying him as a drug addict. First of all, it wasn't me doing the portraying. I just followed in Doyle's footsteps and built on it. But secondly, with regard to heroes, if a man jumps into a raging torrent and saves a drowning child, he may be said to have performed an heroic act. But if the same man jumps into the same torrent and saves the same child, and does it with a ball and chain attached to his leg, I would submit that he's more heroic rather than less, and that Holmes' addiction, far from minimizing his heroism, really sets it off in greater relief, since he has to function despite it. And, as Mark Twain said about committees, when the creator said, let there be life, if there had been Congress, we never would have had it. And when you talk about whether Spock should die and under what it gets all confused when people start voting on it, and so I'm familiar with fandom, but I've never paid any attention to it. And when I'm making the story up, it only gets in your way. I have to go with my instinct, with my gut. And I don't try to make movies for audiences. I try to make them for myself. And the assumption that I make is that if I like this, other people will like it. I would never tell you a joke that I didn't think was funny, on the off chance that you might be amused. I know that I'll never get a laugh if I'm not laughing myself at the idea of it.
See, and I agree. I have this argument all the time where artists, really should be making stuff for themselves. And even though they hope the audience likes it and they hope that it, does big things, deep down they're making it for them. And that brings up a good question I had for you, was an artistic call for the movie. The uniforms, they were different than in the motion picture. And I thought perhaps you had, a reason for changing it and making that call. What was the reason?
Well, my reasons all had to do with trying to make the whole thing more naval, if you like. Gene Roddenberry took exception to this. He said it's not the military, it's more like the Coast Guard. And I said, well, you can argue about this till the cows come home, but in the original TV show, it looked to me like they're running around in Dr. Denton's, and I didn't quite understand what they were wearing in the first movie. And I said, it should be something, nautical in character, and that's what I was going for. That's what I was hoping for. And I guess it worked because everybody else sort of did variations on it after that.
And also, it seems like there was some kind of tie maybe from the original episode, the Balance of Terror, and the submarine battle motif and stuff that were drawn from that for the Wrath of Khan. Is that true?
I don't really remember anything, much from the original episode. I mean, I saw Space Seed once, and I thought, okay, I got it. He was on the ship. He tried to make a mutiny, and they dumped him on the island. And that was sort of all I remember about it.
Well, and with choosing that character Khan, and with choosing that storyline and picking up on it, it means that you're bringing back Ricardo Montalban, who is such a dynamic actor. I mean, he can have
brilliant actor.
Absolutely. So what was it like working with him off camera and directing him and working with somebody who has just such a wide range?
Well, first of all, I must say that the idea of doing Space Seed as part of the backstory, this was Harve Bennett's idea, not mine, and I liked it and I went with it. Montalban, who became, I think, a great friend, like many, many actors, is basically winds up being wasted, doesn't come into contact with the roles that he should have. He was on Broadway doing Shaw. He also was on Broadway doing a musical. He did Jamaica with Lena Horne, and he had enormous range that was rarely exploited. And I suppose, sort of waited all his life to come into contact with a role into which he could really dive fearlessly. He also used to complain to me as we got to know each other, that he needed direction. He didn't know what he was doing when he was performing, and that he complained that he never got directed, that he would wind up working for shooters rather than people who would help shape his performance. And we found this out at the very beginning because his first day of shooting was in the Botany Bay cargo canisters where they've been living and where Chekhov finds him. And he has a long speech. It was 6 pages of speech about what he's doing there and why he's so enraged. And that was his first day. And unlike the rest of the cast, he was unable to attend our rehearsals because of his television commitment, Fantasy Island. So I didn't really know him very well. I'd had lunch with him. I gave him a copy of Moby Dick, and I said, read this. It's all here. And we sort of blocked out his scene, and he was letter perfect, and he went through it and rehearsed it. At the top of his lungs, he was just blasting the roof off the soundstage, and we were all just sort of standing around, and I'm thinking, oh, Jesus, because, this is only the second movie I've ever directed, and this guy's got a resume that's, longer than I'm tall, and what's he going to do if I say something here? But I thought, well, I've got to say something. So I said, well, okay, let's let them do the lighting, and we'll go back to your trailer and chat for a bit. And so we sat down, and I should also say, by the way, that his chest is really his, because everybody always asks. So I'm staring at these pecs and saying, Laurence Olivier once said that an actor should never show an audience his top, because once you show an audience your top, they know you got no place else to go. And he says, oh, yes, he's listening. And I said, and the other thing is, when you're dealing with a crazy person doesn't have to yell and scream. All they have to do is keep you in suspense as to what they're going to do next, and then, because you never know. And I suddenly sort of lunged out at him, and he said, "Oh yes, he's very smart." And he said, "Oh, you're going to direct me? This is good. I need direction. I don't know what I'm doing up there." And that was the beginning of this rather intimate collaboration, in which I was always sort of scaling him down, and he was discovering the pleasures of a kind of minimalist approach, which concealed a great many things and allowed the audience to be frightened and to infer all the rage, all the sense of loss, and then he could really let go in the rip-roaring moments, and it would be a vivid contrast. At least that's what we thought we were doing, and since he's the thing that everybody remembers from the movie, I guess it worked.
Yeah, definitely an iconic performance. So again, it's Nicholas Meyer, director of Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, celebrating...
An iconic performance.
Yes, celebrating 30 years since its release. Before we let you go, Nicholas, back then, like I said, we had Starlog magazine. Now we do have Twitter, Facebook, the internet, everything. There are rumors floating around that JJ's Star Trek II, his new one, is going to revolve around the Khan character. If that's the case, would you be interested to see where he's going to take it?
I don't think so.
For what reason? For just because... See, because I'll tell you before you answer. Let me tell you
certain proprietary reasons.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, me being a big JJ fan, you and I talked about this the last time you were on. I expect something a little bit more original from him and his crew than just rehashing something that's happened already. Because they set up the movie to go anywhere.
First of all, I'm also a fan of him. I'm also personally extremely fond of him. But no, I think I would like my creation to be left alone.
Yeah, I think so too. So again, 30 years of Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, and just as good today as it was back then. And Nicholas Meyer, director. Yeah, well, thank you actually from all of us. Thank you for making it. Thank you for re-injecting life into the Star Trek franchise and giving us what we've had.
And thanks for all the inspiration from all the artists, definitely.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm just going to go through. Thank you for Star Trek IV as well, which is my favorite. And I know that you helped with the writing on that one, and that one just made Star Trek for me. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so again, Nicholas Meyer, like I said before, you are welcome back anytime to talk about Star Trek or anything else that you want to talk about. We could talk about movies for hours. We won't do it today. But again, thank you very much for coming on, and we will talk to you later.
Okay. Thanks for having me.
We interrupt this program to bring you important news.
Now you'll be able to watch us Speaking Geek, the Geek Speak Video Show. Coming soon to youtube.com/GeekSpeakVideos. Subscribe now.
This is Mark Zickery, writer, producer, and director of Space Command, and you're listening to the Geek Speak Show.
Ladies and gentlemen.
And that's it for the Geek Speak Show for this week, celebrating the 30-year anniversary of Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khaaann. It was actually going to be called The Undiscovered Country until they decided to change it to The Vengeance of Khaaann, and then eventually to The Wrath of Khaaann.
Works better anyway.
Totally the best name they could have come up with.
Yeah,
Wrath.
Nicholas Meyer, like I said, like everybody knows, he eventually did get us a movie titled The Undiscovered Country, the last one.
Well, look, when you're a Shakespeare nerd, you got to get your props in where you can.
Or nerd, period. So, again, thanks again to Nicholas Meyer for coming on. Thanks to Scott Tipton for coming on. And don't forget, it is New Comics Wednesday as we record this. Might be sold out already, but the second printing of issue number 1 for Assimilation Squared is out in stores. Leave one for me, please. Joe Field, Lee, Romy, one of you guys. I go in there all the time. Can you hold one for me this time? Please. Pretty please. With fudge and whatever on top.
Lots of sprinkles and whipped cream and cherries.
And speaking of Joe Field and Flying Colors, the show will be up on our YouTube page, YouTube/Geek Speak Videos. If you haven't already, subscribe. Coming soon, the one-shot from, speaking of, Romy from Coastside Comics. And we announced our second episode, the special edition, where Arielle shot first. Saturday, July 7th at Lee's Comics in Mountain View. Celebrating 30 years of Lee's Comics. We'll be there to celebrate with them. Everything starts at 10 o'clock. Get there early because everything will be on sale. 30 cents comics.
I know.
30 cent real classic good comics.
I will
I'm not
be
going to say
there
old.
with my quarters and my nickels.
That's
all excited. Well, they said 30 cents at a time, right?
Yeah, and we're going to bring what we did at Joe's store, the Comic Slam. We're going to do it over here. You and Louise, you'll see him in the video. You guys did a couple of Comic Slams.
I'll try to find a scene without swearing this time.
There's a lot of bleeping in Arielle's.
There may have been some edits.
Just a few. So that'll be happening again Saturday, July 7th at Lee's Comics in Mountain View. Again, all the information will be on our Facebook, on our Twitter, on the show next week. What are we doing next week? Anybody know?
We are doing amazing things.
It's a secret.
20 producers and none of us know what we're going to do.
It's a surprise.
That's what we're going to do. We're going to surprise you. So, who wants to say goodbye because I'm just tired?
I do.
Okay, go ahead. Say goodbye.
All right, guys. See you next week where we will speak more geek.
The Geek Speak Show will be back next week with a brand new episode. In the meantime, follow them on Twitter at Geek Speak Show 1. That's the number 1. Become a fan on Facebook. Subscribe on iTunes. Watch special event coverage and the Geek Speak Video Show on YouTube/Geek Speak Videos. And listen to past shows in the archive section on thegeekspeakshow.com. A big thank you to the Geek Speak Show's content providers, GeekTyrant.com, Collider.com, RamaScreen.com, and MightyVille.com. The Geek Speak Show.